So again, truly excited to hear from the experts. We did a little bit of framing on the top of the call, but again, very appreciative of you all for completing the Golden Leaf Scholarship Survey as we, again, figure out what's really going well with the scholarship and what we can do to make it easier for you all or improve any components for our students, right, who it's really about, so that we can ensure that they are receiving the funds in a timely way that's not complicated. So wanted to have the opportunity to dive a little bit more into some of the questions you all responded to in the survey in a larger group setting, so that we can hear, again, some of the things that are going really well and then some things that we can maybe talk about as a group. So in a moment, I'll pose a couple of questions and I'll also put those in the chat for those who do a little bit better with reading questions. And then for this group, just as you want to speak up and share your responses or build on to what someone else has shared, we can just hop in as we think about each question. And so for our first set of questions, wanted to ask you all what best practices you have when promoting the Golden Leaf Scholarship, and what are some challenges that you face at your particular college or in your community when promoting the Golden Leaf Scholarship?
This is Rachel. I'll go ahead and start with this. For one thing, New Hanover County, which is where Kafer Community College is located, is not one of the tobacco. It's not one of the eligible counties. So if it's students that are from this county, they aren't eligible. We do have students from other areas, but of course we have to dig in and make sure where they came from is an eligible county. My continuing education, or economic workforce development, as it's now called, they seem to do a little bit better job, and I give them more money because those students don't have a lot of financial aid available, so they can advertise it and jump on that and use that. So I've actually transferred some more back over to them so that they can use that along with the gear monies now that HERF money is out.
Thank you, Rachel. And I think that sort of reiterates the point we talked about earlier, that the 25% that is supposed to go to continuing education students, that's certainly just a percentage. You can certainly go over that if you find that the scholarship does meet their needs more versus students who are doing curriculum. So appreciate you for sharing. I think that was a theme we saw within the survey. For those who are serving non-qualifying counties, it can be a challenge to get those students in.
We encourage you all to not be shy, to share your, we want to hear from you because as we, Dr. White and I can only say what we think that you all are feeling as being the challenges and some of the positives that you have, but we can only say it from what we hear, but, straight from, for lack of a better term, the horse's mouth is going to be the best for Golden Leaf. So please, please, please share and be honest.
Right. And one of the reasons that we wanted to do this is we wanted to be able to help identify any challenges that you may have, or any processes that you may have that are working really, really well for you in identifying those students, so we can share that information. We can put together a best practice guide for other colleges to make this process easier in terms of identifying eligible students. So we want to hear from you, from each of you. I know we have somebody representing a director, but if you are familiar with your process and how Mitchell actually reaches out to students, and whether students complete an application, or if there are special reports that are run at your school to identify the students, then we want to hear about that. If you have announcements on your website, which is a way that you can reach out to students that may be eligible for the funding, then share that as well. So we want to hear from each of you. If you don't think you're doing anything great, then you can share that as well. But we do want to hear what you're doing, okay? So we've heard from a couple of people, so let's go around the table. Let's
can
make it
share.
an open discussion.
I can share something, Dr. White.
Okay.
Issue too much because I'm in Robeson County and we are a tobacco rural area. So our students here, they already know about the Golden Leaf and they're applying. We don't even have to identify them. So thankfully, that helps with my school. But I've worked in schools before where we weren't one of those tobacco schools. And as Rachel mentioned, it's a little harder to identify those students and get them to apply. The other little issue I will just say is probably Con Ed side of the house. Even though we have students here that qualify, it's a little harder for the Con Ed side to be able to identify the students or put the word out there for their students. And then also the fact that we don't have, I guess, that's more so for our community college system and in our schools, a way to properly award those Con Ed students on our end. And they're working on a different semester than we are because they're more course-based versus the curriculum students are semester-based. I think that was probably the only challenge that I see right now. We still get them to spend their funds, but we chase Con Ed folks a lot. The continuing education department, it's a lot to get them to identify students for us.
So Zilma, let me ask a question. You said that you chase them a lot. Do they know about the availability of the funds? And are you able to identify who those eligible students are? I know Con Ed is a little bit different. Is there an application process? Is there a way that you market to them? Is there an email sent to Con Ed students that enroll from eligible counties? I mean, how do you reach out to them? I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out.
So that's the part with the Con Ed. Financial aid is kind of out of it. When on the Con Ed side, they do all the marketing on their end or let the students know. And I think what they're kind of doing is just telling them once they're already in class, they can apply for these funds. And so we're relying on the instructors or whoever it is. They do have an application process, the same one they have that we have for the curriculum side of the house. And we do market that information. Once we get the allocation, I let the Vice President of Con Ed know their allocation portion so they know how much I give them the application and so forth. But it's kind of on them to go and then let their students know because they have just like an influx of students coming in whenever. So it's hard for us to kind of identify them.
I'm wondering if there's a way to partner with the continuing education. Is it a continuing education director or dean of their program? Is there a way to, I don't know, maybe have, especially at the beginning of the year when the allocations are dispersed, to have a meeting with the Con Ed education director or program director or dean to say, this is how much you have allocated, that we have allocated, and maybe come up with a strategy for notifying students in that department. Do they get email addresses as well when they enroll?
They do. They don't check for
I'm
us.
asking the question.
Yeah, they do. On our end, yes, the students do get email addresses. But I'm not sure if their students even check those emails like that because specifically if they're in one course that's not even maybe
That's the only course that they may attend. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and it's a more in-person, face-to-face type situation. I don't think that they're really using emails as curriculum students do. So.
Okay. Does anybody else have any suggestions? Can you talk a little bit about what you all do in terms of identifying your Con Ed students?
So with us at Rockingham Community College, we have moved to the one college concept. So all things financial aid, scholarship based, whether it's Con Ed workforce development or curriculum, it does run through our office. We have the same issues that Zilma just indicated with students on the Con Ed side, kind of having to chase them. And even though they are assigned email addresses, more than likely they're not active with that email address. So what we do here is we get a list of those instructors that are teaching the eligible courses. We tell them, hey, we have the Golden Leaf funding available. Can I get you to solicit this information out to your class? Get them to submit the application. The application, we've made it electronic as well as paper. Just have them submit it over here to us in the financial aid office, and then we'll go forth from there and try and get them awarded. But majority of the time, we never spend our full 25% allocation for Con Ed. I never have a problem with curriculum, but that 25%, more times than not, I get close to it, but it's a lot of times we end up sending some of that funding back.
You know, we're a small school, Advanced Granville, so our Con Ed department isn't very big to begin with. And then to have any of the state funding competing with Golden Leaf, you know, sadly, Golden Leaf loses out. That's just a history that we've kind of seen. You know, if we have GEAR money or if we have this new short-term workforce development, they want to spend it first. And then Golden Leaf comes second. And we just don't have enough students for that to all go around with no more response than we get to begin with.
Are you able to spend the minimum requirement?
No, we have not been able to. This year, I think we're going to.
Okay.
We have a very dedicated person in Con Ed and a very dedicated person on my staff, and they have worked very hard. As a matter of fact, we qualified for additional funding. So we're very excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
But even with the additional funding, I think we're still going to hit our 25% because we already had.
Okay.
So, but like I said, they had worked very hard to make that happen, and we're still looking for better practices. I mean, it just, it's been difficult.
And Melissa, to go back to your point, when you're saying that you're using GEAR funding or other expenses, and then Golden Leaf is sort of coming second or third or fourth, is that because those funds cover more, or students are able to get that faster? Is there a difference between that funding versus Golden Leaf funding?
It's so with us trying with Golden, I mean, we're in a tobacco county. Oh, well, we cover 4 counties, and all of our counties are approved. So we try to keep it evenly based between the 4 counties. But part of it is that extra qualification. You know, we're looking at, are you from farming? Are you, you know, those type of qualifications that are not part of what was GEAR, you know, or this new short-term workforce development. And, you know, especially with short-term workforce development, they're giving us money now that we have to spend for summer. And that's a quick deadline, quick turnaround for us to spend whatever money we've chosen to get from that allocation. So once again, Golden Leaf doesn't have the same deadlines, you know, which I'm grateful for. I'm not advocating for more deadlines, but because they don't have the same deadlines, you know, we have a little more flexibility with the timing of it. You know, that just sometimes they get the priority.
And I know that a couple of you all have said that Golden Leaf doesn't have the same deadlines, but, you know, Golden Leaf was available as early as July 1. And I know that, you know, for our Con Ed students, most of them, they don't, their terms, I know you have to award based on a curriculum term, but they started programs in August as well. And, you know, they will spread throughout the semesters. We, the GEAR funding, some of it was made available and will expire at the end of September. So I know that you are mentioning, you know, these other pots of money, but Golden Leaf was there before any of them, if that makes any sense. So I'm just having a hard time kind of understanding why Golden Leaf comes fourth, second, third, fourth, or fifth in line.
I mean, part of it is the application. I mean, just that additional, it's quicker for us to just say, oh, yes, they meet the qualifications award. We don't have to look at the application. Did they answer yes to any of these questions? Mm-hmm. You know, that type of thing. It's a faster process. But I mean, thankfully, GEAR's pretty much gone. I am very grateful for that. But, you know, it was a quicker turnaround for that money just to spend it. And then also, you know, they keep throwing these small pots of money at us with very little warning. And we're grateful for the money for our students. But Golden Leaf has been there, like you said before, and it'll be there after. This money is gone, and we're grateful for that. And we hope that continues. What we're looking at is, okay, so we have all the publicity from the governor's office for all these different programs that come from them, not from us. And Golden Leaf does not get that same kind of press. You know, even though, you know, we tried to tell our students, it's not out there in the newspapers, it's not getting the most recent notification to students. Oh, the governor released all these funds for students who are looking, you know, to go back to work in different fields or whatever. They tend to release more press for us that gets more education, more knowledge out there, I think, than, you know, than Golden Leaf does. As much as we try to push it locally, it doesn't have that statewide press that some of the governor's more recent programs are getting. But I mean, that's just my experience. I don't know that everybody's had that experience. I have it across 2 schools because I was the one who did all the awarding for Golden Leaf at Alamance when I was there. And so I'm speaking some about my experiences there as well. But that's just kind of what that was the first thing the student heard of, was the GEAR funding, and that's what they came in and asked for before we even got a chance to talk about what was available. Mm-hmm. Because I also made the application at ACC electronic, and that helped the process. Mm-hmm. That helped speed up the process and the reviewing of it and things like that. So I'm looking at doing the same thing here. We're just not quite there yet, but we're working on it. But yeah, no, I'm looking for more ideas and better ways to reach out to these students. I really wish they would check their school email, but a lot of them don't even activate their school email, much less check it. So you know, that's a challenge. We don't, from my office, we don't really have another way to communicate with them except through Con Ed. And they've been active, but I think they need ideas too. And so I'm hoping to take more ideas back to them on possibly how we can, you know, better our processes.
I know here at Wake Tech, we have a lot of trouble with that, getting the applications in themselves. Like some of the funding that we get, we don't necessarily have an application for it. You know, it's just automatically given. And then what happens is by the time I get some applications and we promote it, I mean, we do it through social media. I've contacted department heads. We've pulled Informa reports to make sure that we're capturing students, but we just don't get the applications, at least from the outside counties. We get a lot from Wake County, but they're not eligible. So then, you know, it's just a matter of sorting through that and trying to figure out a better way to reach the students that really need it. And I've reached out to department heads in agricultural departments thinking, well, maybe that will do it if they're living in a county where they're learning this for so that they can take this back. But still, reaching them has been really hard, and getting those applications in has been really, really hard.
So here at Pitt, we I have to kind of tend more towards Zilma. We don't particularly have any sort of problems collecting applications. We normally have a very large wait list, so we're pretty lucky in that regard. I sympathize with everyone on the Con Ed side. I think we all struggle with Con Ed. One of the things that I did, because we have so many different pots of funding and it does go through me now and our office, I have one of my staff is like specifically dedicated to these special programs. And she handles like all the awarding, all the tracking. She loves all the spreadsheets and stuff. And what she does every Monday, instead of notifying the students, because at least here at Pitt, some of them get an email address, some of them don't. It's not, the information isn't updated in the system. That's all I know. So we actually took like recruiting the students directly out of the equation. And I go to the program directors. And when the students actually want to register for the classes, the program directors kind of run through the checklist of, you know, we're out of gear funds now, but they would have the gear application, they'd have the Golden Leaf application, they'd have our emergency application. You know, now they have the short-term workforce development. And they pretty much, before they register the students, they go through this checklist of all the stuff that they have and have the students apply for it. But every Monday, what we do is every Monday we email all of the program directors and say, here's an update. Here's how much funding we have. Here are all the programs. Here are their requirements. And here's what you need to do. And we just send it every single Monday. Because what I found is that there's kind of even though we're so aware of the funds, you know, I try to imagine working in the Con Ed side where someone else has to handle all the grant money and you have no idea where the program is at. So we try to email them every Monday and let them know about all the programs, how much money we have left. And I have to be honest, my Con Ed, you know, some of my programs don't do as well. You know, our health sciences program director, it's like every single class, she will send me like all of the applications at once for the class. And it seems to work out well for us. I can't say anything bad about the program at all. Any of the reporting requirements, I always just wish we had more funds. That's all I hope.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? Danny, we've heard from you. Katrina? And it's okay, guys, if you want to show your face.
It's Rachel. My continuing education department does their own applications, and what they do, they send me emails and I post the money and we pay it. So they kind of, and when I tell them, here's you some more money, they're always very happy because they have a lot of students that are asking if there's any kind of financial aid. So that's something they can give if they're from one of the eligible counties. So they kind of do it. And as I give them more, they love it. They just jump on it and award it. So they kind of do their own thing when they have an application in SoftDocs. And they house it and keep up with the applications and report to me what they've spent and the students and all that. So I'm pretty lucky like that, I guess.
Can I throw out just a kind of, I don't know if his recommendation is more so not for Golden Leaf, it's probably for the system office and us on the financial aid side. And people may hate me for this, but what I would love to see is that financial aid does take over all of Con Ed scholarships, any monies completely. So we're not relying on Con Ed to identify the students. But I think we need some discussion on with the system office side of the house on how we can make that happen with the system that we have, because Colleague is not user-friendly for Con Ed. It is only for curriculum. And if there's a way that we can do that, then probably financial aid offices would probably need also more resources, staff to help manage that, because now with Con Ed getting this STWD grant, as well as other the monies that we've been receiving, I've said it a few years ago that I saw Con Ed starting to get financial aid in the recent years, in the future, and it's happening now. So I do see where financial aid is going to have to step up and take responsibility for Con Ed scholarships. And I would say we'll have to take that load off of just relying on them to find the students and sending it to us, and us having to be active in knowing Con Ed more and being out there with Con Ed and those students as well, and doing the kind of one college model like Carol talked about, because that's what I see in the future with all these funding that Con Ed is not receiving. It's not working to me to kind of leave it on Con Ed staff that are not financial aid knowledgeable, or they're not kind of thinking about that. They're thinking about teaching their class or any of their other administrative kind of duties. But I think we need a system to work for us as well to help us track those students in awards.
And I agree with Selma. That's actually what I was going to talk about. We have been making the steps to move towards the one college. It's a learning curve, especially when people have been doing it a certain way for years and years. But I think that that's the direction we need to go in order to do it. And I'm definitely going to need a person on my staff that can handle that. Right now, it's being handled at this desk right here.
Right.
All of the
Right.
emergency money, all of the smaller scholarships. When I lost Andrea to Wake Tech.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. being a-
Yeah, so she was a big part of that. So since then, I'm doing all of that, and I appreciate Andrea every day that she's not here. But that's what we're seeing. We have trouble getting the applications timely from Con Ed. One of the requirements for the short-term workforce development, can we pay people who are in existing programs? Yeah, as long as they're still enrolled. They send someone over the day after their program ended. And I know they had the best intentions, but they don't remember the little things like that we have to remember. So I think it definitely needs to come in-house, where it's being handled in financial aid, where we're used to remembering all those little details.
Mhm. Mhm. Brenda, I didn't know if you wanted to comment on that. I think that Zilma and Katrina and all of you, I think that would definitely have to be a discussion with the System Office Technology Department as it relates to developing a Con Ed component of colleague or banner, whichever one that we're moving to in the future. But I think that definitely could be a discussion. Of course, that is something that's not managed through student services, but definitely we could arrange a discussion with our technology department just to see if it's feasible, because there is probably going to be a programming issue. Definitely they can reach out to Ellucian to see if other schools have a component in which they used to allocate funds to continuing ed students. So that's kind of a research and a technology discussion. And sometimes it involved additional money in order to do those things, to rebuild or add to the system that we already have. A lot of times we used to get questions about admissions, making changes to the admissions module or component of colleague. And oftentimes our system people would tell us, well, it's going to take a certain amount of time to build that new program or additional funds to add to it. But I think it's something that, because we're getting more and more funds to award to students, and again, just like you already said, that if you have a colleague component, that is supposed to make it easier to identify those students and to award them. But at the same time, you may need some additional help or to reallocate some resources within your area. So that's definitely a discussion. Brenda, what is your feedback on that as well?
You just said it all, really. But the one thing that comes back to my mind is the one college model. And I know that our colleges have talked about that for a number of years. It's been the topic of, conversation, but I think the one piece that was missing in the one college model is that we failed to continue to communicate our needs as a financial aid office, because we could see that we were going to incorporate continuing education, scholarships, grants, that type thing into, it was going to fall into our laps in financial aid. But we, just kind of took it for what it was. And now it's really coming more so to fruition. But it is on the radar of the system office. It's kind of hard to come up with a plan that's going to work, especially with us currently using Colleague and experimenting with another system. And I think that Destiny One, which is what continuing education uses, it's supposed to have some type Colleague interface. I'm not very familiar with it. Because I know it's something that has been in the works for a number of years prior to me even coming to the system office. But we will certainly, as this conversation is being recorded, we're certainly going to share this recording with our senior team to just kind of get their thoughts, and we'll certainly keep you updated on that. But until then, you all are doing an amazing job with what you have, and I don't think that I can say that enough. And when I say it, I certainly do mean it, because I have been on that other side of the desk, and I know the challenges that you have, not only with Golden Leaf, but some of the other funding, and with additional funding just hitting us left and right. You all are taking it. You're continuously in the fire, but you're making things happen.
So Carol, thank you, Brenda. Carol, did you have some comments or suggestions? And then maybe we might want to get back to the questions, Arlena, because I know we're going to try to go to 11:30. So Carol, if you could provide any feedback.
Well, like I said, we have moved to the one college concept. I think as far as the workforce development and Con Ed scholarships, I think they were given to me soon after I stepped into this role. So we just had to do the best that we can and figure out a way with utilizing Colleague, and we run them through the FATR. We have a cheat sheet of where we make it equivalent to a curriculum term versus a CE term, and we award it on a curriculum term, work with our business office to try to make sure that we're dispersing those funds correctly, reaching out to the instructors in those areas, trying to get them to help us. We do put all of our information for Golden Leaf online. We put it in two places. We put it on our financial aid page, and we put it on the Con Ed page, hoping that the students that are enrolled in those Con Ed programs, if they're not checking our page, at least maybe they can see that information on the Con Ed page. And we'll say we do have a representative from Workforce Development that's here in our student services area that helps with registering students. And they too have kind of like a checklist. I think one of the other representatives here from another school said they had a checklist where when students are registering for those courses, they kind of go through and say, did I mention this? Did I mention this? Have you done that? And so with GEARS, when we had GEARS, they mentioned GEARS. We have institutional funding that we call the Training Gain Scholarship that is specifically for workforce development. So that's on the checklist, as well as Golden Leaf, where that's on the checklist as well. But again, I think Melissa said where she has issues with Golden Leaf competing for some of the other funding. I can kind of agree and empathize with her there, because like I said, we have our own institutional funding for Training Gain that it kind of mimics Golden Leaf with the eligible programs of 96 hours or more. And so we have both of those pots of money, and we're just trying to make sure that we can get it all spent to the eligible students.
Okay, so those of you who are on the call, are all of you planning to spend all of your Golden Leaf money? I know, Lee, you're on the list to get additional funds.
Yes.
But
yes, please give me more money.
I just want to make sure that as we speak about it, that you're also conscious of the fact that if you are having difficulty, that needs to be relayed to the system office as quickly as possible. Because our job this year and every year really is to make sure that those funds are awarded to your needy students. Because as much as we love the additional funding that we're getting now, I think it's just wonderful, but it may not always be there. And
Right.
Golden Leaf has kind of been there for us over the years. So we want to make sure that those students are taken care of. Those students who could use the money are taken care of. I think what we're going to do now, Arleta, what question are we on? Are we on 3 or
I think
2?
we'll pivot a little bit. So before we move more through the questions, it might be helpful to talk about, we had this last question about if you had a magic wand, and it sounds like one of the bigger challenges of what we maybe can control for implementation and promotion of the scholarship is the application and the outreach to Con Ed. So thinking about this question of if you all had a magic wand, what changes would you make to the Golden Leaf Scholarship application and awarding process?
I would like to see that, and I hate to say this because I don't want to not give funds to the Con Ed side, but give us some flexibility that if we do not get the Con Ed students, can we just use that for the curriculum? That yes, it's a minimum 25%, as more of a preference or, but not required. Because then we could just move that over to the curriculum side, and definitely spend it that way. That would be one big magic wand for me. Yeah, the application, again, I don't have a problem with collecting application, but I've been at schools where we have had problems with that because it was in the tobacco county. So I can see where people would want the application kind of gone, and just the flexibility of awarding it as they find students that are, identify students that are eligible.
Very helpful, Zelma.
Agreed with the preference of the 25% requirement instead of requirement preference for the, of course, make every attempt to spend what you can on Con Ed, but not be required to spend a certain percentage on Con Ed, especially for those schools like myself who has no problem with spending the curriculum portion.
We're in the same boat. Yeah, we can spend curriculum all day long. We've had to work harder on the Con Ed side. We've succeeded so far, but it does take a lot more effort. And like I said, with the additional funding that we've received, we're struggling again to get any response from Con Ed. With the additional funding that we have received, we're not receiving funding to increase staff or to increase the offerings that we have. So therefore, we have money, but we don't have necessarily an increase in students because we're maxed out with the staffing that we have and the facilities that we have. So, magic wand to be able to do that, and also to award it more automatically, based on criteria that we already have access to. Some of those questions that unless we ask them and then we get it on the application, we don't know. There's no way to tell.
Could you all speak to what information you do have access to?
That's a harder question when we start talking about Con Ed. For curriculum, we know their county because we have their address. We've got access to whether or not they have need because we have their EFC and their cost of attendance. So for curriculum, it's easy. For Con Ed, it's a little harder to define some of those things.
We do usually at least have an address so we know a county.
Yes.
I don't, it would be, I guess it would be easier to figure out maybe need on their basis without, going into more specific questions. But it's definitely something we could brainstorm together to figure out how to get more information.
That financial need is a hard one. I have started asking Con Ed students to complete FAFSAs for certain aids just to be able to, like even the HERF money. The easiest way is to have them do a FAFSA for us to be able to determine their financial need. It's a little harder to try to, and I know in years past, we used to, for Con Ed, have students bring in documentation to try to show that they were within that poverty level. But that was a lot of manual computations to try to figure that out, whereas the FAFSA would just be able to tell us that right away. So, and then of course that will help with the initiatives of increasing FAFSA completion across the state. And if we are going to that one college model, they already are familiar with doing FAFSAs. They can move right into that whenever they do want to transition into a curriculum program. I see benefits of requiring a FAFSA.
Mm-hmm. We had some resistance at Alamance when we tried that. We had
they do
a
the same
lot of
thing.
resistance on the continuing education side of just, I'd rather not get the money and not have to complete the FAFSA.
Yeah, the short-term workforce development is a grant is a perfect example of that. I'm getting pushback on the RDS.
Yeah, we are too.
Yeah, so adding a FAFSA too, I agree with everything that Zelma said. It would prepare the students for when they're ready to move to the curriculum side. Absolutely, and it would give us what we need so that we could award more easily and more quickly. But I would anticipate some pushback as well.
Yeah, on our continuing education, a lot of times they don't have social security numbers because we have a couple of those continuing education programs VA approved. And when I go to certify, I don't have a social because they don't put it, it's not put there, it's not required. So then if you're trying to get them to do a FAFSA and match it up with this, social security number, they don't have that on file. So I have to go through that enough with curriculum students where their FAFSA is not coming in because they didn't put a social security number because it's optional. So I'm not sure how much more work that would create. We do loans. I know Pitt does loans. I know Zelma, you don't do loans. Wayne doesn't do loans. Vance Graham. So see, that's why I think I have a problem because students take loans instead of going to other like scholarships and stuff that they aren't guaranteed the money up front. And that's why mine's flipped. My curriculum Golden Leaf is less than the continuing education because they have so little money to work with that they offer it, and those students jump on it and use that money they get to help for gas and that type of thing while they're coming to classes. And we have several that, like truck driving is on the continuing education side now, and the power linemen. So those are pretty intense. They're in school 8 to 5 in the power linemen, so they really can use this funds, and they jump on it and get the long leaf. Oh, excuse me, not long leaf. Get the golden leaf.
So for you all, in a perfect world, if there was an opportunity for maybe a separate application for continuing education students, because I honestly feel like they should receive a percentage of Golden Leaf, because a lot, aside from short-term workforce development, GEAR, a lot of those are indeed short-term programs. Would it be beneficial to have a separate application for continuing education? Take out, of course, the FAFSA requirement because it's not required for continuing education students. And if they could answer one of those questions that they are unemployed, seeking to, or they've been notified of a pending layoff, some of those questions that we have in there, if that student could answer yes to one of those and could provide their county of residence, just a simplified application, would that make your process give you a little less headache and make your process work a little bit better, that we would still continue to provide a service to our continuing education students?
I'm going to be honest, I think the application is simple enough. It's not, I see those questions in there, and yeah, we could use that to determine financial need. I think the part that I know in past schools, we require documentation because we were not sure if we can do the self-certification route. And kind of covering us, we wanted documentation to show that, yes, we did make sure they had financial need. But if that's not required, and I don't think I'm not doing that at this point. I know in previous schools I've done that, but at this point I don't require a FAFSA for even curriculum students because it's not required. But we do look at their financial need because I have to do a scoring rubric. I use a scoring rubric because I have so many people that are eligible and apply. So we do give them points for financial need. We give them points for if they have lost their job in the past 2 years and so forth. So that's how we pick our students. But I think the application is very simple enough. I guess some folks do have the problem with students actually filling out the application, which is our problem with students for everything, scholarships, period. They just don't want to apply for anything. I don't know why, but it's I don't see anything that we can simplify more on this application. It's pretty simple. They don't have to write an essay. They don't have to really do anything else but just fill out one page really and sign.
And they're no longer required to do the publicity piece, that disclaimer or whatever. So that was, we heard you all when we came out with the 21-22 application. So that was immediately removed as being a barrier, and especially for CE students.
I just had a comment about the FAFSA form. I understand why sometimes financial aid directors want the students to complete that, but I think it could be a barrier for this group of students continuing ed. They're taking one class, or they may be taking two over a period of 6 months. But I think the process needs to be as simple as possible, simple as asking a question, them answering the questions, putting in their county, very much like Brenda indicated. And, maybe even attaching their ID information or providing their ID numbers. But I think when you add the component of the FAFSA to something like this, it makes it, sometimes it could make it a barrier because you have all kinds of information. And if they got to go get a tax return and they got to go and do this, and they're in need of these funds to pay for the course now, it just seems to be an additional barrier that we're putting on them that they don't have to have because it's not required. You understand what I'm saying? It's just not required.
Yeah,
I want to
weigh that option too, but it's just Con Ed is getting a lot of money right now. It's starting to go to me. It's seeming to me that it should be it's a financial aid program. It's a complete financial aid program for Con Ed on their own.
Yeah, so Con Ed, yeah, I was referring to Con Ed. I mean, you already have that information on those students that are in curriculum programs. You already have that information, but it just seems like an additional barrier that you would be adding to Con Ed for Con Ed students. That's all.
well,
And it's already hard enough to award that money and get students to complete a simple application that's 1 page or a half page. So I wouldn't add that additional barrier for them. I wouldn't suggest that.
To kind of piggyback off of all that, when I first came on board here, we had all those we had a whole bunch of additional requirements for Golden Leaf that we looked at, and as well as other state programs. And once I learned that, some of the things we were doing weren't necessarily required, I see it just as Dr. White said, not only as like a barrier for a student, but we're working harder. So, and we don't need to, I go on the application, cause I think all of us can agree. I don't necessarily know that the data information in our Con Ed, on our Con Ed side is correct. And that's more of, I don't know how they operate on their end. So I go by the application, and I find it to be very easy. It just, I go with what they say on the application, and that's it.
Okay, so, and maybe this is allowed, okay, but so with all these different ones for Con Ed right now, I'd really love to have a single application that the student could fill out, and we could determine which of the funds they qualify for. Is that even a possibility, or do we have to keep it on the Golden Leaf letterhead and all?
The college application.
Okay, so there's in Con Ed, they have a Golden Leaf application. We have the HERF application. We've got the GEARS application. So we've got all of these different applications. What I'd like to do is combine it all into one application. And then when we get the application, because it's going to be easier to get all the students to do one application rather than getting half of them to do 4 applications. Which is what we end up seeing, is you've got those people who are willing to do the application, and you get an application for every grant from them. I'd like to see just one application where they only have to fill one out once, and we're going to see which of the funds best meet their needs.
Well, I will put my financial aid director hat back on for a minute and just make a suggestion. Is that you could possibly do a general application.
Mhm.
And, I think that Golden Leaf, but Arlene, I'll let you speak on this, as I think that Golden Leaf likes to see their logo. So you could possibly include all of the logos and a general application, and then you all could, take that application if it goes back to the financial aid office, or if it goes to your scholarship area or whatever, your foundation, and they could make those determinations as to what award would work better for a student, and particularly for continuing education.
Wonderful. That would be great if we could do that.
Mhm.
I might be misunderstanding, but aren't these students allowed to get multiple programs?
Yes,
They are.
graded funding is what continuing education is using now, because let's say that they could get, if they're in a truck driver program, $1,100, I'm just gonna throw out a number. And if you all are assigning them $750 from Golden Leaf, there's some additional fundings that, could be used to cover their books, their supplies, or maybe Golden Leaf wasn't the first choice to use, but if they're using State Employee Credit Union, Golden Leaf could come in there and as another source of funding for braided, and allow that student enough to get their books or to pay transportation or whatever. Ultimately, it's going to result in a refund, but these type braided fundings would be able to cover up to the cost of attendance, or for continuing education up to the cost of the program. Because keep in mind that for Golden Leaf, a student can receive up to $1,850 a year. And that would have to be split between your fall and your spring semesters, and it could go over to summer, the cost of the program, but it has to be tied to a curriculum term. Does that make sense?
And see, that's why I also would like for the financial aid to be more involved in the Con Ed side. We don't know the cost of their total program other than just the charge that we see when they register for the class. We don't know their books. We don't know any other uniforms or any other information on their costs either. So when we're giving all these money, we want the financial need. We want to make sure it don't go over cost of program stuff. We are relying on continuing ed because we don't have any of the information of financial aid. So I believe we really need to get more involved in taking over that kind of piece of the whole awarding process. And that's why I say we need a system also to kind of help with that. Students can go to the bookstore and purchase Con Ed books and supplies that they need, but again, we don't know that. And if we can't award them, they can't use those funds at the bookstore to purchase it there. So we've been having to do something behind the scenes with our bookstore for Con Ed students, whereas like we're giving them like a spreadsheet to say these students have this amount. My folks are having to manually go in there, say, oh, if it's $750, 180 of that is for their tuition. They have this left over. But it's a manual process and it's taking time, and they need that information sometimes right away. We don't have that because we're waiting on Con Ed to send us the application before we can award, before we can add them to the spreadsheet. We've done a Google spreadsheet to try to make it a little easier, but that's where I'm saying that I feel like we really need the system to help us, our colleague system or whatever system, to kind of help us tracking that.
We had instructors at Alamance that wouldn't even use the bookstore. They required the students to buy an online book first day of class and wouldn't even run it through our bookstore. So it's that disconnect. It was finding out after the fact that was even the case.
At Cape Fear, when we get a new pot of money, we have a meeting with the business office, financial aid, and the continuing education folks that are going to be involved with it, and come up with a plan of how we're going to do it. So personally, with my staffing, I don't have an extreme amount of people. Right now, there's 4 counting me because I'm down 2 people. So I don't want to have to do any more than what I'm doing. And that's for them to give me a list, let me post it, and get the business office to pay. So we go through it up front And they pretty much take the responsibility of getting applications, telling me who to award, knowing the program is eligible. And that's the way I like it with those programs. I don't want to have to be involved with actually selecting their students when I don't have half the information personally.
Okay.
All very helpful. If I could, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Go ahead.
I think that was a helpful conversation. And Katrina, to your point about the combined application, and Brenda, your response, I know Golden Leaf, it would be great to have our logo on things, all of that. We honestly just want to get money to students. So whatever is most helpful to make that happen. And I know there's a letter that we have that goes out from our president, and maybe that's going out, maybe that's not. So certainly we would like them to know the awards are from Golden Leaf, but whatever makes the process easiest for you all, we are okay with that. If that's a combined application with or without our logo, that's fine. And I did want to pivot and ask about reporting systems. And so Golden Leaf we're building our brain muscle around what this means, and know that you all have systems that we just don't yet know the interworkings of. But one of the things that our board looks at each month that we go to them, or during our bi-monthly board meetings, is they want to know from our community colleges scholarship how much money is being awarded per college, our students receiving that money. And we understand that you all's reporting systems are a little bit different, but do want to ask if there are any challenges that you all have with reporting to the system office, scholarship awards, and recipient information.
The only, and I don't think this is necessarily a problem with reporting, but we do here at Pitt, we do portion our funds out like spring, summer, and fall. So I know that it doesn't look like we're spending the money on our end because we're reserving some for the summer. I mean, that, and I don't know if that's anything that can be changed. And then, when we were offered possible additional funds for the program, we went through our wait list and just, awarded a whole bunch of people to make it look like we had spent that allocation. I think it was 50% that you were looking at, Dr. White. So we went
Yes.
through and we did that right away.
Did.
But that's kind of the only issue on my end, is that we try to portion out the funds, and it doesn't look on your end like sometimes we are spending the money, but it's not necessarily a huge problem because, like I said, we were able to just turn around and show you that we could spend the funds.
Very helpful. We do look at the dashboard, and so sometimes that information is deceiving. We know that you all are spending the money, and I know Brenda and Dr. White have been able to give us the business sort of monthly rundown of what's being spent, and so sometimes that matches the dashboard, sometimes it doesn't, and I know we're working to reconcile that, and so that comment, Lee, is very helpful.
I do love the dashboard too. I'll just throw that out. We love the dashboard very much here.
That's good to hear. That's great to hear.
So I'll speak a little bit about reporting and the challenge that Dr. White and I have with communicating the reporting is that it looks like, as you said, Lee, that you all are, making the awards. But what Golden Leaf looks at on the dashboard is award transmittals. So you all are making the awards, it's being transmitted, but where the issue is, or where the concern is with the way that your business offices request reimbursement. So it looks like Golden Leaf award transmittals may be somewhere around $1.2 million. I'm just throwing out. However, your colleges have requested reimbursement of maybe $860, 860,000. So there's a delay. So, and I know that Dr. White talked about this in one of our meetings, was that they're coming soon. There needs to be a way that we can communicate with our business offices to get them to request reimbursement, because any reimbursements that they request after July 1, after June 30, will go towards next year. Does that make sense? So it's imperative that you all start making those spring summer awards as soon as possible so that your business office can request reimbursement by June 30.
And Brenda, that makes sense because
That's
I was
good.
wondering why I didn't get any more money because I have a wait list as well.
Right.
And I'm already
Right.
spent almost, I'm at 75%. The rest is in my summer semester. So I will be spending it all. But when I heard that Lee got some extra money, and I'm like, why did I get extra money as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. It's probably because my business office didn't, at the
Right.
time you guys were looking at the information, hadn't
Right.
done the reimbursement.
Right.
Okay.
So we'll be looking again. We just got another report of what colleges are spending. So we'll be looking again to see what you're spending and to determine what we'll have based on schools contacting us to say we're going to reallocate additional money. We only received a small portion of money that we could reallocate. So that's why all of the schools didn't get any money yet. When colleges contact us and say, I can't spend this money, then we already have identified a group of people like yourselves that can spend that money. So we definitely don't want to get to May 30th and have people holding money to award for summer school rather than we want you to go ahead and award money in May for summer school by May 30th so that your business office can request the money, like Brenda was saying, and then the funds can be paid to the system by from Golden Leaf by June 30th. Because otherwise we'll be at another year with funds unspent, and we don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that all of our students eligible students receive the Golden Leaf funding that's available to them. We've been really lucky this year. Our students have been lucky and fortunate to have all these different pots of money during a pandemic. And so we want to make sure we get those funds out to them. And I know it's a challenge.
I do appreciate the increase in the amounts. I remember when these amounts were a lot less. So I do appreciate Golden Leaf increasing those amounts and then also providing the COVID emergency money they did the year COVID hit as well, separate from the regular Golden Leaf pod. That was a big help.
I know this is slightly off topic, but Dr. White, when should we expect for those schools who requested an increase, when should we expect notification on that?
Well, it will probably be sometime early May, because one of the things that I'm going to be doing now, we had a few schools that were still really low. And so we'll be reaching out to them to get some type of documentation from them, their president, and their area supervisor as to whether or not the funds are going to be spent. And as soon as we can get confirmation of that, then we'll be able to reallocate. We're hoping that everybody does what they say they're going to do and they spend it. That's what we really want to do. We don't want to take any money from anybody, but we don't want to leave any on the table as well, because we know that that could impact our ability to serve students next year. So we're trying to meet all needs as much as possible. We'll definitely reach out to you as soon as possible.
And Dr. White, would you just speak on the process involved with the reallocation, because it's not an overnight thing. So if you touch on that a little bit.
Right. So what we do is we reach out to the community colleges, like if they've spent less than 5% or even less than 15%, we'll reach out to them and they have to look at what they can award. They have to send a document back to us indicating what they can award and what they're reallocating. And it has to be signed by their president, their chief financial officer, and the financial aid administrator. Everybody at the school, all those key individuals have to know that they are reallocating funds, because one of the things that schools have to do when they receive Golden Leaf, we have to receive an acknowledgement that they're going to award those funds to students. And then once we get the listing of colleges that are reallocating money back, then we have to prepare a memo to our business office to get an approval to reallocate those funds to this list of colleges. Say if your college is on the list requesting additional money. And normally what we do is we try to develop a listing of those schools that requested the money based on the date that they requested it and the amount that they need, and then we split it. That's how we're doing it. But it is a process, and as I said, we'll be looking at the numbers now that we've got the updated numbers for this month, and we'll see. And I know there's some schools that are very close to spending all of their money, and so we'll look at that, and then those that are in the low category, then we'll be reaching out to them.
I think that is a good pivot, Dr. White, you sharing about the process to one of our final questions, is thinking about the reallocation process of Golden Leaf Scholarship funds. And as Dr. White was talking about that, just asking you all what works well with the process and what are challenges or opportunities that may be present that we could think about or explore to make the process better.
The only thing that, comes to my mind is and again, because we have a wait list and we don't have an issue spending the funds, it's hard for me because we want to make sure we have some kind of summer funding for curriculum and for Con Ed. It's hard for me to stomach, I guess, spending all of my funds in fall and spring, or the majority of them, and then now kind of not knowing what I'm going to have, especially on the Con Ed side. They're really kind of chomping at the bit because they want funding for their summer classes. And I understand that. And so now I'm, to me, I'm at the point where it's like, I don't know whether I'm going to have funding for you or not. I'm hoping, but then with me hoping, that's also saying other schools aren't, spending their funds. So I think that's kind of the only challenge that I have is I don't want to spend all of these funds so that I can look like I need the funding, but then potentially not have it in the summer.
Right.
And I guess that's a good problem to have, but that's the only thing that I would say. And I don't know of a good solution. I just think it's maybe more of my insecurities of having to spend everything or the majority of it.
And that certainly does make sense, Lee.
It does.
But I'll tell you where the hesitancy is with our schools that we have kind of been on top of for not spending, is they are required to get their president to sign off on the fact that they're not going to be able to spend $20,000, or that they've not even started. And that's a great hesitation for many of our schools. They either can't, catch the president in place, or, just being hesitant about, saying that they're sending some monies back. But Dr. White and I have been on top of them and will continue to, because like we said, we've got to have this money requested by June 30 to make the 21-22 reporting cycle for Golden Leaf. And we will continue our efforts and really share your concerns as well for possible solution.
So maybe, because I know that it looked at a 50% that I know that when I submitted the allocation paperwork, we were looking at 50% or more. I wonder if maybe that part can be adjusted to where you look at, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, for me, I mean, we split it literally in thirds, summer, fall, and spring.
Okay.
And at the time when I was submitting the paperwork, we, because you all were looking at a month behind, we were just, I think, Dr. White, if I remember correctly, we were just doing our spring disbursement.
Yes, yes.
So I was able to show you. So maybe if instead of a 50% requirement, you look at a third, which I think kind of, I don't know, equals out, but I do.
Realistic.
Yeah, because then, and I do know that, Dr. White worked with me so that I think I showed you my
You did.
funds management. So I was able to show that based on the disbursement, we had spent more funds, and that was helpful. So maybe, I don't know, I don't have a good solution right now, but that was helpful, that I knew that I was able to show you my transmittal to say, like, okay, even though you're looking at a month behind, we actually did spend more than 50%. That was helpful.
Yeah. We'll kind of look at our process and see. I think at the time that we started looking, at the end of December, early January, we had a lot of schools that had not spent very much money at all. I think there could have been maybe 3-4 schools that had spent 50% at that time, but the numbers were very low. And so we had to do something to push the colleges to move forward. There's no way we could have gotten to February with 75% of our schools not spending that money. So we had to come up with a plan. And of course, as we move from month to month and time to time, then we'll, look at other ways that we can strategize to make it more useful and more beneficial to the colleges. So I definitely will look at your suggestions and appreciate them as well.
Absolutely.
I know we have about 5 minutes left. I have been taking notes, and of course, this call has been recorded, but have just learned so much from this group and appreciate you all for being honest and sharing your feedback. I do want to leave space in case there are just any other suggestions or comments that you want to make free about the conversation. Maybe a question we didn't pose in the questions that you received in the email or that we haven't talked through today.
As we are entering our 22-23 application process for Golden Leaf, do you all feel that the $1.5 million that we had last year was enough, not enough, or what are your thoughts on that? Because Golden Leaf does give us the opportunity to ask for what we feel we can spend or award to our students.
I'm always an advocate for more money, but I understand some of the challenges the other schools have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a way to give, I know there is already priority funding in the allocation for those schools, I guess, that do fall in those tiers, but can we increase the priority funding for those schools that are in those tobacco areas that have no issue with spending the funds? Because like I said, I've worked at schools that had the challenges that were in a eligible county, so I understand the other schools and their challenges, like Lee said, but I would like more money. I'm never gonna say no to more funds for the students.
Okay. I've taken all of that down, and before we leave, I want to share with you the story of what I encountered when we went to apply for our Golden Leaf funding for 21-22. Brand new to me, Monty Hickman, bless him, passed the Golden Leaf torch along to me, and it was time for us to start the application process. We were only going to ask for our usual amount, the $750,000 that we've had for many years, or $1 million. We had increased it to $1 million. Well, he reached out to our president, President Stith, and President Stith had sat on the Golden Leaf board. So he knew all about the program. We get an invitation to a meeting with President Stith, myself, Dr. Hickman, Dr. Gold, our chief of staff, and we're telling him that we're going to ask for the $1 million. And he goes, no. He said, what about $3 million? So I knew the challenges that we'd had in the past with spending our Golden Leaf funding. I was new. President Stith was brand new as well. And I'm sitting there thinking, I can't tell this man that we can't spend this type money. So I did. I told him, I said, I think that the $3 million request is a little bit too much. He says, well, what about 2? I said, well, okay, I think we'll ask for 2. We did ask for the $2 million. We were very hesitant about it. I was, because I'm thinking, how in the heck are we going to get this money out to our students? How are we going to get the school? How am I going to tell the schools that you got way more money than you have spent in the past? But long story short, you all have made the $1.5 million. Golden Leaf did not approve us for the $2 million, but they did give us the $1.5 million. And you all have made it work. You have made it happen. So I will be so happy to report to to President Stith, and I'm sure that he watches our dashboard and he's aware of a lot of our school expenditures, but he will be so pleased to know that we've got colleges across our 58 colleges, community colleges, that are actually making a way to provide those resources to the students. And as he says, to, for them to be able to complete degrees, certifications, and to go out into our workforces and be productive citizens. And it's all because of people like you. You make a difference.
Thank you for sharing that, Brenda.
Okay, we're right at 11:30. Any other comments or feedback before we close out?
Just a quick question. I've heard lots of chatter about this dashboard. Would anybody be willing to share the link in the chat?
We can put it in the chat, but we can also send it to you. I think it's actually public. Yeah, so if you actually go to our system office website,
yeah,
it's there, but I will see if I can get it in the chat for you.
Okay. I see lots of different dashboards, but I don't see anything particularly related to financial aid or Golden Leaf, as I'm just in here playing around.
I think somebody has put it in the chat already.
Awesome. Thank you, Katrina.
Yeah, and we actually had a financial aid community meeting about the dashboard a couple months ago. So Elizabeth Stoddard actually did a presentation on that, and Dr. Ashley Seaman.
Mm-hmm. Do you see it, Carol?
I do. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.
Bookmark that, and you can look at your school's expenditures by date. You also look at the student awards, and importantly, if you see students who have been awarded and are an ineligible county, Dr. White and I will be questioning you on that, because we do provide a report to Golden Leaf. And if the students are awarded in an ineligible county, you're going to be asked to identify the county, make sure that it is eligible, or return those funds. And we are currently working on 18-19 through 2021 for those corrections.
Yes, absolutely. Sure are.
This is Rachel. I just want to say thank you for taking this opportunity and hearing from us. So you kind of know how we feel on the other side, even though you've been there before. So I'd like to thank you for this.
I'd
Okay.
also like to say thank you. I think I've learned more today and gotten more ideas today than the entire time that I've been doing this. So I thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you. Okay, did you have any last minutes and last words, and we'll go ahead and close out. We have another session coming up tomorrow at the same time that we have the financial aid community meeting. And so we're hoping to get to hear from some other administrators as well, and that we can use this combined feedback from both groups to at least, make some recommendations or make a few changes that'll make it a little bit easier for you. So we appreciate all of you very, very much. And Brenda, if you will give me some guidance on this recording,
I'm gonna stop
what we need to do.
I'm gonna
Okay,
stop
yeah.
the recording.
So we
Thank you
can get the
all
link
for all the,
to
go ahead.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you all. Enjoy your day.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, bye.